Cantor.
And I'm Aubrey Valeka.
And we did the Community Garden Service Project in Melkbosplaas 1 and 2. So we were assigned the 2 community gardens, and they're called Melkbosplaas 1 and 2, and Plas means farm. And our main objective is to build a sustainable structure for a tomato and onion garden. And we'll be planting tomato and onion seeds in this garden, but our main purpose for going there is to build a structure for the windy conditions that will happen during the winter.
Our community that we will be working in is in Melkbosplaas, which is on the west coast of Cape Town. The 2 communities live in old farmhouse structures with maybe 1 room and have serious leaking and overcrowding. They are close to each other, but not many families, and they have lots of kids. There is also an alcohol abuse problem in these communities, which shows that they may be shy at first, but they have to trust us.
And that shows a picture of the community. So what are some of the problems? The main problem that we have is that the weather conditions are very windy during the winter, and the area that we'll be working with has mild and moderately wet winters and warm and dry summers. So in the winter, it's June to the end of August, and it has cold fronts, and that's when it's the very strong winds. And the wind is a problem because it happens all year round, but it's just the strongest in the winter. And weeks in February and March have winds called the mountain winds, and during late spring and early summer, Cape Town has strong winds called the Cape Doctor. And the Cape Doctor it's called the Cape Doctor because the winds get rid of all of the air pollution. But the reason why the windy weather is such a problem is because that the wind would be the reason for the structure not being able to sustain. And another problem that we have to address is the infestation of snails and slugs. And they crawl into the gardens and they eat all the crops and they ruin the vegetables. So the sustainable structure would be completely pointless if we didn't address the snails and slugs problem.
Another problem is that people steal the materials for their houses, such as repairing their roofs, and they also use these materials for their leakage problems. And the last problem is their lack of nutrition. So as mentioned before, there is alcohol abuse, so we're hoping that these gardens will give them some sort of nutrition in their diets.
So how do we know that these are problems?
The gardens built last year were not sustainable due to the heavy winds and rain, and the black netting ripped, and the black netting attached to the wooden structures were also ruined.
The materials were taken for the people to rebuild their roofs and for their own use, and since the community have dilapidated houses, they become leaky, so they need all the materials that they can to try and rebuild their roofs. So we need to try and find materials that they wouldn't want to steal. And the snails are a problem because they make it so the crops aren't they're not going to be able to be used by the people of the community or by the chutney maker. So why is there a need for a project? There's a huge need for this project because the chutney maker needs the onions and the tomatoes to make a profit. And also, without us being there, the community wouldn't have the profits to make a sustainable structure on their own.
The communities can also benefit because they lack the tools and funds to make this garden successful.
So these are some of the possible solutions that we thought of.
One solution we thought of was to put concrete into the ground with metal poles distanced around the garden with bolted thick netting around the poles.
We also thought that we would put the bolt thick mesh netting to the poles that are distanced around the garden. But if we decide against the concrete, that we would just dig deeper holes into the ground and make longer poles.
And we want to make it neat and strong by the strong netting.
And finally, to fix the snail problem, we did some research and we found out that we can either make a beer trap, put orange grinds on the ground, or we can sprinkle eggshells. So the first one with the beer trap, we didn't think that was a good idea because of the alcohol problem in the community and because I'm sure beer is more expensive there than the other solutions. The orange grinds in the ground we thought wouldn't be a good idea because we would be the ones that would have to pick up the live snails and slugs underneath the orange grinds, and we didn't think that people would want to do that. Like, if we don't want to do that, I don't think people of the community would want to do that. And then we also thought of the sprinkling the eggshells. So we think that that's the best solution because it's easily attainable and it's easy to do when they need to, and they basically just need to do it every time a new batch goes in. So we just have a video.
How to use organic pest control in your garden. Hello and welcome to Video Jug. Sometimes aphids and slugs can get the best of your garden. Petroleum-based and sewage sludge pesticides can carry dangerous chemicals that can harm your plants, the soil, and your family. Here are some safe organic alternatives that will keep the bugs out of your bok choy. You will need a container with some clean eggshells, something to crush the eggshells, ladybugs, and fresh compost. Step 1. Eggshells. You might see large holes eaten through your leafy green vegetables and garden plants. The slugs and snails have been very busy. To rid your garden of this slime once and for all, rinse off some eggshells and place them into a container and use a small garden tool to crush them into small pieces. Sprinkle the small pieces of eggshells all around the base of your plants and vegetables. Slugs don't like the texture of the eggshells and will stay away from your leafy greens.
So the supplies that we need are compost, bolts, poles, netting, seeds, cement, gloves, soil, and shovels.
We will be implanting our ideas with measurements of 5 meters by 3 meters for each garden, which is roughly 10 by 16 feet. We went to Home Depot and found materials and prices, and we will be looking for those when we go down to the warehouse in South Africa.
So when we figured out the measurements, we thought that we would do 10 poles for each garden that are distanced around it, and we need 20 poles in total that are about 1 meter long, which is like 4 feet. And then we found a thick wind-resistant netting at Home Depot, and we would need about 50 meters of it for both of the gardens combined.
And as for the seeds, Tamron already started the first batch, so we're just going to have to get a few more packages.
And then when it came to gloves, we figured that we would need at least 16 pairs of gloves for the whole class. And then whatever they already have, if community members want to help out, they can use them too, and we could all use them together.
The soil is already there, and as for the compost, it will be free from surrounding communities and farms.
And we thought that we would also need at least 4 shovels and maybe a barrel. So are these accessible? They are, because we can get the supplies from a builder's warehouse in Sunningdale. And there's enough soil for both of the gardens, and compost will be free, and we can get those from the surrounding communities and farms.
And the rest we will get from local gardening centers.
So do the supplies need to be prepared?
The seeds are already planted, and we will get the rest when we at the gardening stores.
And then Tamron said that the area will be completely cleared and ready for us to make the structure, and the soil is very fertile in that area, so planting won't be a problem. How far are the supplies from the site? The builder's warehouse is in Sunningdale, and when we Google mapped it, it's about 15 minutes away, and the communities are close by to each other, so that shouldn't be a problem. Is this reoccurring? Yes, this is reoccurring because the seeds need to be planted in batches, and if all the seeds are planted at once, then there'll be 6 months without any vegetables growing at all. So we have to plant them once at a time, and she had already planted the first batch for us.
And the netting needs to stay bolted, and the gardens need to get water, therefore the community is going to have to upkeep that.
And also we just need to make sure that the people of the community know how to prevent the slugs and snails from coming in. So what is our budget? Basically, we found our budget from Home Depot because we weren't able to find out the prices at the builder's warehouse. We just converted what we found at Home Depot into the South African rand, and we found out that our total could be around $400, but it also depends on the quality of the materials that we get and how much the materials are at the actual builder's warehouse.
How are we planning it? We're going to be doing it as a class, and everyone's going to have different duties and assignments.
And hopefully the community will be excited and willing to help, because ultimately the gardens are for them, and if they're excited and we make them excited, they'll be more willing to upkeep it, and they have to take over the responsibilities once we leave.
How long will the project take? It will take about 2 days, and this is a schedule of a detailed plan of what we'll be doing, the days and the times.
And we think that we'll be able to complete it, and then we also think that our project is very feasible. We just need to make sure that the structure is strong, and we need to make sure that the community is willing to help out. So our project schedule before the area just needs to be cleared, which is already going to be done, and then we also need to buy the supplies before we are able to build.
And when we're there, we're going to be gathering the supplies and then building the gardens.
And then after, again, we just need to leave the rest of the batches up to the community to do that. And then the techniques, they need to also know that they need to water in the summer because it's warm and more dry then. So our long-term goal is for this project is to give the communities vegetable gardens in order for people to make profits off of the tomatoes and onions, as well as being able to get nutritional foods.
And we also need to build the gardens once, and then the communities have to upkeep them.
So has this been done before?
Yes, last year's class built the vegetable garden in Varkplaas, and it was sustainable throughout the winter.
And we think our project will be successful because we're working off of what they did, and we thought by having a thicker wind-resistant netting and metal poles that it'll be more successful even if we decide not to use the concrete. So what should we do after we leave? We thought that we should keep in touch with Tamron to see if the gardens lasted throughout the windy winters.
And we think that we should stay in touch with the future class to see if they have any new ideas.
And we thought that was a good idea because if ours doesn't work, then we can try and come up with other solutions. So some challenges that we may face while we're in South Africa is getting the supplies from the store to the communities and making sure the communities want to be involved in it.
And making sure that everything is properly built and sturdy.
We also think that people in our group or the communities may be tired or cranky, so we need to remind ourselves why we're there and the importance of it.
And it's going to get hot and we're not going to want to get messy, but we also have to remind ourselves why we're there.
So challenges we had before South Africa was that we weren't able to see the gardens in person and we weren't able to plan things while we're there.
And the communication with Tamron was really hard because of the different time zones in our schedules. And as well as the fundraising, because it was hard to make sure that we have enough money for the supplies.
And I'm going to stop you right there just because your time to present is up. And so questions from the peanut gallery here. What are some of the questions that we have for Mel and Aubrey? So I've got a bunch, but I'd like to start with some of the either evaluators or students.
First off, guys, I think it was a really good job because I had the veggie garden last year and that was my project. I know it's difficult coming up with all this stuff and there's a lot of work, so good job. In the beginning, you said that they have to trust you, right?
Yeah.
But I just want you guys to think this for a second. You guys are foreign to them, and they don't know who you are. It's like just if someone comes to you and just says you have to start trusting me. I don't want to sound like a dick or anything, but it's a lot harder than it seems. Like communicating with them. When we went there, we were like, we had no idea what we were doing. Like he basically forced us to eat lunch with them because we were all a little like tentative. So, I mean, I don't think they're gonna necessarily trust you in the way you think they are. And I don't know. I suggest that when you guys get there, you really like try and interact with them more than we even did, because I wish I did when I got there, to build that trust beforehand. So that was just one comment I had. And the eggshells, how are you guys gonna supply with a year full of eggshells? Because does that like run out after a certain amount of
Well,
time?
we just figured that like that was easier for them to buy eggshells than other things if they.
Is there like a process they have to go through, like cleaning and stuff? Because I don't know, like, do they have like a steady water supply and stuff like that?
Well, as long as the eggshells are dried out, it should be fine.
And
Because
so,
the slugs will like go towards the egg, like the moisture.
Yeah.
So they just need to be like dried and crushed up.
so is there an assumption that they will have eggs?
Yeah.
And so my question is, what happens if they don't have eggs?
If they
And what happens if the area is not cleared before we get there?
if the area isn't cleared before we get there, then it should probably take like an hour or two for us to do it because Cameron said that it wasn't like that area itself was pretty clean.
Well, that's what they said when we got there too, and it was a mess, like a mess. Like we were sitting there picking glass out like left and right. It took all of us to do it, and like that took like half the time, right? I think was it. It took a long time. So hopefully you guys will be able to get the community to, because I know the
Right.
people in our community actually did help a little bit, and if they didn't, it would have taken even longer. So.
Other questions?
Yeah, I think you guys did a great job, first of all, it was really good. I just have a comment about the concrete. When we did, I did the playground,
Mhm.
and when we did the concrete, it took like a lot of time and like effort, and I know me and my friend, worked on it, and we needed like so much help with that. Who are you planning on like getting the concrete down and like getting it to the site?
Well, from the builder's warehouse we would do that, but after thinking about everything in total, we thought that we would probably just have to build the, dig deeper into the ground and have longer poles and hope that it'll sustain. But especially if we're gonna have to clean up the site, we're not gonna have time to do the concrete. So it's just based on like navigating once we get there.
So how many people would you need to help, and what different types of jobs would there be, and who would be responsible for, not necessarily specifically who are the people responsible, but say you need 3 people to do X job, or what, have you broken that down?
No, but we have in our chart, it said that it would take like 5 people to do each garden, but then that's like the actual gardening. So then if we had 5 more doing the structure, then if we had help from the community, I think it could be feasible. I think it is feasible.
And do you guys know if Cameron's brother is going to help you? Because he was a really big help when we were there. Like a tremendous help, because he did
We
like
don't know.
all the stuff, but yeah, you guys should try and ask Cameron that because he was great. He knows all about that stuff.
Good. Any other questions from peanut gathering? Nice, very good.